Okay. All right. Okay, as promised, I'm going to talk to you about the IoT facts label. So a little bit about the background. Last week, I don't know if you guys saw this, there was an article come out. Putting cigarette packet warnings on IoT devices is dead funny. So this is a smart pet feeder. And so here's a satirical ad. We may starve your dog or cat. The warning is, you acknowledge and agree that the survival of Fido or Fluffy is directly dependent on the reliability of your home internet connection and the availability of our online services. So you're starting to see a lot of jokes about people trying to take their lives from dumb to smart. And like I said, with my home, what I've ended up with is I've got well over 100 connected things. And that includes cameras, that includes TVs, that includes laptops, it includes everything. And like I said, it took me, I had 14 months, did not live in the house while it was being remodeled, but I had 14 months to kind of figure it all out on paper because I had to wait until they were finished before I could actually go and try anything. The only thing I could do while the house was being remodeled was to have it pre-wired for a lot of things. So my whole camera system throughout the house is hardwired. All of my TVs and laptops and everything, all of that is hardwired. So I have about 40 different things that are connected to my router. So, but then the rest of the stuff that I have is either on Wi-Fi or I use it through Bluetooth. And then I had to figure out which mesh network I wanted to use. Was it going to be Zigbee or was it going to be Z-Wave? And I went with Z-Wave. Then I had to have a security system, which is separate than my surveillance system. So, like I said, I could have, if I had wanted to, I could have gotten a home security system that promised to do it all for me because they're all offering, we're going to, secure your home, we're going to automate your home. Or I could have gone with a home automation company as well. They will automate everything, and then they will tack on the security. And that's the problem that we have in the United States. Either you go first with a security company who tacks on the home automation, or you go with a home automation company that tacks on as a third piece the home security. What I decided to do is, since my whole thing is Internet of Things, I wanted to live it. So I became a do-it-yourselfer. And I had 14 months to kind of figure it out. And my proposition is that nobody has that kind of time to figure all this stuff out. Now, is everything working? Yes, everything is working. It's as secure as I know how to make it secure, but it did take a little bit of finagling. So, if I had this label that I'm going to show you, my life would have been a lot easier, but I didn't have it. So I'm going to start here. In the United States, we have what we call these nutrition facts labels. Do you guys have that here? Yes, okay. And you either love them or you hate them, right? So here's like an example. This is like, Greek yogurt, cherry, and then you've got angel food cake as compared to devil's food cake. And if you take a look, it's just like, they both offer lower calories for the item it is, yogurt and cake, and zero trans fat. We know that's a good thing and stuff like that. But we see that the Greeks, they nail the fitness craze, lower sodium and lower sugar, and angels aren't always heavenly. So again, these nutrition facts labels, whether we love them or we hate them, we can depend on them to be on our packaged foods. And if they are not on our packaged foods because it's related to produce or something, I can just Google it and it will come up with a nutrition fact label for these things that don't have the facts label. So with that, I said we need the same oversight with our IoT things. So I'm just going to keep it simple. Remember, we're just talking about consumers, and we're not talking about people that really think about these things, and we don't want them to have to think about these things. But what I'm suggesting is we just give it an overall thing rating. It's going to be 1 to 5 stars. And then we're going to put an expiration date on that. So whatever, whoever, gets it, maybe it lasts for 1 year, and then they have to get it renewed or something. So you know how good this rating is. And then if you want to break it down, here are the 5 areas. I don't think these are the best terms for consumers, but you get my point. You know, how secure is this thing? How does it protect me? How's privacy? What's the connectivity? The connectivity, I can have more stars the more different ways I can connect a thing. Sometimes I can connect a thing Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and you know, maybe that's really, really good. Maybe there's only one way I can connect that thing into my system. Interoperability. How well does this thing play with others? This one is killing the smart home market right now, because people are sitting there taking this thing over here, and it's just like, oh my gosh, if I had this thing, it's going to make my life this much easier and stuff. And then they go and they look at this thing, and it's going to make their life a whole lot easier. But then when they get these two things trying to work together, they cannot. Every one of these things has an app. You can control it. But if you've got 20 different things, you do not want to have to manage it with 20 different apps. You want to centralize that whole experience. So interoperability is a big deal. Standards is a big deal. The consumer doesn't care as much, but through education, they're going to have to care. It's not that there is a lack of standards in IoT. There are a lot of IoT boards and standards that have been developed, and they are very, very good. But a lot of the standards are overlapping. Some of them are actually conflicting. And so we gotta have to flush that out. And then the fact is, it's just like, we're not talking about products that stay in one country. So this thing, how well is this thing going to behave on a global stage? Now, down at the bottom, you see I have cool, creepy, and just plain wrong. That went along with the whole point of my session. The answer is IoT cool, creepy, or just plain wrong? The answer is yes, it's cool, yes, it's creepy, and sometimes it is just plain wrong. Most of the things that we go when we buy it because it's cool. We don't buy creepy things and stuff. We may buy a cool thing and then may find out that it's creepy, or we may find out that it's just plain wrong. Just plain wrong would be the example of that Titan note that I was talking about in my earlier session. So here's an example of what a label may look like. So let's just think about that Titan note. Overall thing rating, I'll give it 2 stars. Now, how did it come up with 2 stars? Security and privacy, it didn't do very well. It's great on connectivity, interoperability, and standards. Nope. It's 40% cool. Now, when I went and contributed to this particular project on Indiegogo, I would have said it was 100% cool. Not creepy at all, not just plain wrong. But then after this whole thing started, it was just like, you know, this is what it looks like. You know what? If I saw this thing slapped on all these different things that I want to buy and stuff, it would it'd give me some level of comfort. If I am a security geek or a privacy freak and I see a 1 or 2 star, I don't care how cool that thing is, you're going to walk away. But if you don't really care about that, you know, okay. Connectivity, some people like that connectivity. Some people need that interoperability. And then standards, I don't think people are going to sit there and not take something because it doesn't apply to standards, but as a manufacturer of that thing, you know, what are people going to go for? They want to have 5 stars. I mean, I get to see the headlines now, you know, hey, so-and-so just got a 5-star rating. So this is the IoT facts label. And like I said, Sarah Cooper, she is the general manager for AWS, Amazon Web Services IoT division. And she like pings me like once a month, have you contacted the FTC? And it's just like, I don't know exactly how to take this slide to the FTC and stuff. But I do know that there is some legislation that they are talking about an expiration date for things in the US. And so people are definitely thinking about it. But these are the types of things that consumers need to be concerned with, but they don't even know that they need to be concerned with it. All they care about is getting that thing into their house or, you know, into their car, into on their body, and getting it working. Okay, so like I said, we're going to go through the same questions, but this time we're going to look at it from an organizational perspective. So, Okay, so that thing is actually my little avatar, and you see that little soapbox? It's kind of fun. It's actually a real soapbox. That soapbox, as you see it, is sitting in my gym. Back in the day, I was in product management, and I had a lot of fun with it. And sometimes I would just get on my soapbox about different things. It might be with the developers, it might be with the salespeople. And I'd sit there and I would say, okay, you guys, I'm getting on my soapbox. And then I would step off my soapbox, and I'm off my soapbox, you guys. Any questions? When I left that company, I mean, people were very, very good, very, very kind. They actually created this wooden box. They made it. It's all paper mache thing. My name's on it and everything like that. And as a going away gift, Tamara, don't forget your soapbox when you're walking out. So I love it. It's one of those little momentums and everything. But I do have a soapbox, and I do get on it. Now, when it comes to privacy and security, we all wear multiple hats. And earlier today, I was talking about some of the individual hats that we talk about. Well, let's look at it in context of some of the organizations. So I've mentioned the consumer quite a bit, but an organizational category would be the public sector. We've talked about citizens, private sector, employees, students, academia, and I could actually add more and more and more, but you get the point. The little yellow spinner in the middle basically is pointing out that there are relationships going on between all of these entities at various times. Just for GDPR alone, I mean, it impacts the consumer. So you got a public sector that wants to protect protect citizens, EU citizens, when they're behaving as consumers, and it's dealing with private sectors, and then employees are now engaged in that whole process, and by the raise of hands, it's just like a lot of us are not actually doing a lot in that area. There are students that might be doing it, and academia, they're talking about it. So every single thing, we have a lot of tie-ins, and we got to coordinate that effort, and it's not easy. So I'm not surprised that, I didn't realize that this conference had been talking about GDPR for like 3 years, and yet when the one guy asked, how many people are actually moving forward, I mean, you'd see in the U.S. you wouldn't expect many hands. Here I was expecting to see a few more hands and everything, but it is a complex issue. And so when it comes about privacy and security, the same side, two sides of the same coin, absolutely from an organization. But at the organizational level, now it's not the same person having to wrestle with that. Within an organization, you've got people that are solely focused on security. You have people that are solely working on privacy, and it's trying to bring those worlds together on whatever you're doing. So we're going to go through the data lifecycle again, but before, one of the questions I like to ask is with Snowden, is he a hero, traitor, or a schmuck? And even to this day, I don't know if I can really answer that. I could say yes, yes, and yes to all of them. I saw the documentary Citizen 4, and then there was a movie that came out that was called Snowden. It was very pro-Snowden. But the Citizen 4 documentary, what was very interesting is I came out of there liking the person more, but liking what he did less. And so, but what we can sit there and say thank you to Snowden for is, regardless of how he did it, is he brought the discussion of our privacy, our security, to the dinner table. Now everybody's talking about it. They don't sit there and say, hey, thanks to Snowden, we were able to talk about it, but it is on the forefront of our discussions. So again, data privacy and security begins at the point of creation or collection. Again, if you don't collect it as an organization, then there's nothing to protect or secure. And I cannot believe how many, even to this day, when I go online or an app, when I am being asked for my personal information, and I'm sitting there thinking, why do you need that piece of information? But as soon as I give it, And I can give bogus information, of course, but as soon as I give it, then that organization is responsible for maintaining it. I was working on a nonprofit website company, and I was working with the board, and I said, what information do you want to collect about our users? And they came back with this laundry list of like 25 things. And my question was, what are we going to do with that info? Oh, it's going to tell us some really great things. Really? It's just like, are we going to give them the ability to maintain that data? They were only going to be given the ability to maintain like half of it. And it's just like, so what if this other stuff becomes obsolete? It's wrong. And it's just like, they were not thinking about it. They can collect it because it's easy. It's easy to throw these forms up and ask for all this information and stuff. You know, I applaud, with this GDPR and stuff, I mean, I'd like to see it be very successful and set a standard, and US, wake up, and let's start moving down that path, because we do really need to care about, the information that's being shared. There are 2 companies out there right now. There's multiple companies, but there are 2 companies that are very, very large, and all they're doing is collecting data and processing that data. And they're called Facebook and Google. I mean, all it is data. That's all they have. They don't have anything physical and stuff. All it is data. And you know what? What are they doing with that data? What is the use of data in both of those cases? They are selling our data, anonymized, so that they can make money off of our data. And it's just like, wow, it's just a very interesting thing. If we're going to get some handcuffs put on people and things changed, I am not going to be sad about that. Okay. Now, I talked about, with big data, the thing about organizations is that back in the 2011 timeframe, this concept of Hadoop or Apache Hadoop became very, very popular. And a lot of companies were going down that path. It's just like, wow, I can store any and all kinds of data. So before, the data that companies are typically working with is just the structured data, the data that you put into your relational databases in your data warehouses. That's all that they were working with, really. But now they were given the promise of, wow, you can sit there and you can go to get your customer's Twitter feed. You can go and get this, and you can tie it all together, and you can get that 360-degree view. And it's not going to be that expensive, and you're going to be able to do it. And that's what companies were doing. But you know what's been going on in the last 6 months is the organization after organization is failing with their Hadoop implementations. It's not that they don't want to utilize the data, but Hadoop is what kind of was the poster child that brought all of this discussion around. And it, with the Facebooks and the Googles of the world, that's where Hadoop came from. Now they are saying Hadoop is dead. Companies don't know what to do with it, and so they are moving it out. The problem still exists. They're moving on to other technologies, but Hadoop is not the poster child that it was. Now with the use, we talked about that, people are more concerned about how their data is being used than the fact that it's being, collected and stored. And so the one thing that I like from the GDPR, what it's going to do is this whole thing about consent. And it's just like, those privacy policies and the terms of service, they have to be in English now. And I like that last line. It must be as easy to withdraw consent as it is to give it. That is actually very, very good. I was at an event, and a gal that was on either the FTC or FCC, Federal Trade Commission or Federal Consumer Commission, this gal was talking about how her 2 kids, one was age 9, one was age 11, they were not allowed to install a new app on their phone or get an account that they wanted unless they could tell her how that thing was going to use their information. So you have this 9-year-old and this 11-year-old having to read these agreements that I can promise you most of us really don't read. But it's just like, and she would ask them questions. Do you feel comfortable with that? And they would have to say yes. And it's just like, okay. And so she actually made them go through that process. She didn't have to go and read anything because she only had to worry about the things that her kids were involved with. But she started seeing, some of the things, because a lot of the language is very much a legalese. And so I do like the fact that, how your data is going to be used. I mean, I like that about the GDPR. Cloud services and social channels have used on work and personal devices make it easy to share data. It is just really, really easy. And the guy, the moderator who asked me at the end, I mean, we are sharing a lot of data. And it's, just because I share one thing, I go and share that, that picture of my dog or something like that. That thing can be shared multiple times and stuff. And, images and videos, you guys know full well. Those things take up a lot of storage. So when they're talking about data volumes and stuff, videos and images are very, very popular and do take up a lot of space. The one challenge that, they're trying to use machine learning for to help is, we want machines to be able to interpret images and videos a lot better. I mean, they can't. I mean, if you want to find that picture with you in the red dress that you really, really liked and you had the black shoes and stuff, you can't sit there and look. You have to use your eyeballs. The human has to do that. You're not going to be able to use a machine to do that. And so what we need to do is when we're talking about the sharing of stuff, when we share stuff on our personal devices, that's one thing. But when we are sharing stuff from our work devices or from our work accounts or from our social accounts on behalf of work, I mean, companies need to make sure that there are some really good guidelines in place. I told you about the thing just on Saturday. I found out how much my laptop was locked down. And SAS has got this thing called the Employee Advocacy Program, and what they're trying to do is you sign up for it and you go through a series of classes and stuff, and this is how you are supposed to behave online. This is what you are allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say. And they give you the freedom, at SAS to, use your social accounts any way that you want, and, my company wants me to say in my Twitter bio, I need to say, opinions are mine. Well, okay, I don't do that because they are my opinions. The thing is, though, is that if you are sharing something socially and you've got on your consumer cap or you've got on your mom cap or you've got something or your dad cap on and stuff like that, it is always going to be a reflection of the company that you work for. It's very easy to see where you're working. LinkedIn, I just type in somebody's name, I'll see a LinkedIn profile most of the time. People know. So you've got to be careful about what you are sharing. And so when companies, need to come in and make a statement about how that's going to be done. People are losing their jobs because of stupid things that they are tweeting out and posting on Facebook and Instagram. When it comes to archives, again, because of the volumes of data, you guys are already doing the backups and the restores and stuff, the archiving, you got to make sure that they work. The stuff that you are archiving, the stuff that you archived, 10 years ago, what kind of device is that on? Do you still have the ability to read that data? So that's very, very important in these days and age. And with the destruction is, if and when personal data is tagged for destruction, the question is to what extent. And I talked about that this morning. You need to be transparent about your process, and the GDPR is going to help with that. It's going to be very good. But for the most part, I mean, me living in America, I really have no idea how companies are, what they're doing with my data and what happens when it gets deleted. You need to be transparent, and people need to understand what you are doing behind the scenes. So what can we do as organizations? So, like I said, once upon a time, I used to be a product manager, and back in the day, this is so going to age me, but we had, with our software, we would have major releases and minor releases, and the major releases would take at least 18 months. The minor release could take 3 to 6 months to get out the door. These major releases, really, it took 18 months, and we used, for our software development lifecycle, we used the waterfall method, and you guys might be familiar, something more current is Agile and DevOps and stuff. My company was doing it the long way. And so what happens in that time frame is you sit on this 18-month project and stuff, and at the end of this cycle, you basically have test and documentation, right? And those things, and training. And if you are running along and things have to be cut so that you can meet your deadline to get that thing out the door, what goes first? Training goes out the door. And then, we're running out of more time. So what gets cut off the project schedule? Documentation. That got put off. And then testing. Sometimes products went out, software releases went out without any testing so that the deadline could be met. This is how we used to do things. Product design, and then we would go ahead and launch it 18 months later, often without documentation, often without training, and the customer feedback was horrendous. Your support team was on the phone all of the time. That's how it used to work. Nowadays, the documentation and the training is part of the design. What we are working for is if you're releasing an app or you're releasing some sort of site, you're trying to make it as intuitive as possible so that you don't have to have all this documentation. It's just built into the design of the product itself. And so now what's happening is that customers are a lot more satisfied, and then there's a lot more channels on how to get back and get help with that. What do we need going forward? Well, we already have, we know about the privacy by design. It's been around for a while, and I'm glad to see that it's part of the GDPR. We also need secure by design. When we are making our things, we need to make sure that they are secure by design back here. All those Indiegogo, all those Kickstarter, all those innovative projects that I get involved with, I can promise you privacy and security by design is not there. They just want to get it out the door and stuff, and then they'll wait until, people complain. And you know what? They may not have a second chance. Then there's a whole thing about the ethical framework that you guys are familiar with that I don't have time to go into. Okay, so as we know, the GDPR is not optional. And so, yes, these are all of the GDPR sessions at this conference. And so it looks like a lot of people are still, in the working phase and stuff. You guys have got 7 months. There's work to be done. So I'm just going to encourage you to go to one or more of these sessions. And then here's a quick quiz. So I told you there's just relationships between all of these things. What is your guess? What is the glue that's going to keep this circle together? You actually heard it in the NATO. You actually heard it in the NATO one. Because we're short on time, I'm going to give you 4 hints. Here we go. It can't be bought. It's earned over time. It can be lost in an instant. And once lost, it may never return. Trust. Trust. Okay? So the thing is right now your competitors are out there. And if a customer does not like how you have treated their data, treated them or whatever, they are 1 click away from the next organization. And with that, do your part to keep it safe. Thank you.